It's February and the garden looks bare. There's lots to get done, soil amending, harvesting veggies. Let's go see what's going on. One of the first things that I get in the ground is peas. We have to get in peas early around here, the first week in February, so that we can actually have a really good crop. Now I can only do 1 or 2 successions of this, plant them for 1 or 2 weeks after that because it gets warm around here fast. And once we hit 85 degrees, peas quit producing. Their blossoms drop and we don't end up with any more peas. So I've got to get the peas in early so we get a good healthy crop. Whether you're growing the vining variety of peas or the dwarf variety, I like to always use a trellis because it just makes picking a lot easier. So at the time of putting your pea seeds in, put that trellis in because then it gives you kind of a marker of where your peas are at. And then you don't have to put it in and damage your peas later. In the same bed that I planted my peas, I've also planted on that south side. I've done radishes, cilantro, and mustard greens because these are all really cold hardy and do really well when we plant them in February here. Even though our nighttime temperatures are pretty low, they're in the low 20s sometimes in February, it's totally fine to plant our crops at this time because our daytime temperatures are in the 60s and it warms these raised bed soils up really quickly so that things can germinate fairly fast. Now if we go into the low teens, then obviously I'm going to cover these little crops just to protect them. One of the funner crops that I planted this fall was Kalettes, and these are just a cross between a kale and a Brussels sprouts. They're really fun. They grow right on the stalk of the plant and they're just about ready to harvest. And they look like just a little frilly Brussels sprouts. These are excellent sauteed and they're just yummy eaten fresh in salads as well. But they've got this great color to them. They're super easy to grow and they're super winter hardy. Some of the other things that we've been eating all winter long is purple sprouting broccoli, really cold hardy, and Napa cabbage. So that gives us a little bit of hardiness and some greens all through the winter time. And they're both great thrown in salads or even sauteed. But now they're going to start to bolt now that our days are getting a little bit longer and our days are going to get warmer. So I need to make sure that I get these types of things used up quickly. Right here, this just looks like a bunch of dead debris, but this is actually a really good medicinal plant. This is Ella campaign, and I love this one in the summertime because when it blooms, it has this beautiful yellow flower, and it makes a great screen as well because it gets to be 8 foot tall. But during this time of year, I'll dig the roots up of this, I'll chop them up, dry them for use for later, or I'll take that fresh root and just immerse it in some honey, and it's really good to soothe that cough and that phlegm. This is an excellent herb or plant to have in your garden. Right here where there's just this little tiny bit of growth, you can tell there's something underground. This is parsnips here, and I love parsnips during the winter time because they've definitely sweetened up and gotten that full flavor that tastes so much better than when you have parsnips during the summertime. But I got to make sure that I get these harvested as well before they start growing, because once they start growing, they start to get pithy in the middle and then they don't taste very good. So I'll be digging these up this week. February will be the last month that I feed my garlic a nitrogen fertilizer. I feed my garlic nitrogen fertilizer in October when I plant it, and then again in January or February time. We really want to get that nice growth going because we want these leaves to be as big as we can and robust as we can so that they can take in all that photosynthesis, and then that puts that right down into that root. And then I'll just sprinkle the blood meal over the top of this and I'll mulch this heavily. A lot of times in February or through the winter time, you'll see a lot of the yellowing happening on some of the outer leaves on garlic. And this just happens because our low temperatures just kind of burns those leaves just a little bit. This is perfectly normal and you don't have to worry about it because they're going to come out of it once they start actively growing again. Even though it's February, weeds will still grow, so it's a good idea to get out in the garden and make sure that you remove them while they're young so that they don't get a good root system, especially in your garlic beds. Garlics don't like to compete for nutrients, light, and water. So remove them out of the garlic bed as often as you possibly can, even if they are flowers. Most fall planted crops are harvested in the fall or winter or early spring at their prime. If you go beyond that, then a lot of times they're going to want to go to seed, like the arugula in the front there. It's been wonderful all winter long, but now we've got some starting to go to seed, and then it's just tough and it doesn't taste very good. So at this point, I'll just chop this off and feed it to the chickens, which is a great treat for them as well. Then we've got the little green onions in the front. If we let them go too much longer with these longer days and the days warming, then they're going to want to bolt, go to seed. And then they end up with a hard stalk that goes all the way through the center of that green onion. And then they're hard to chew on, and so they're not very good. And so we more than likely wouldn't be eating these. So if we harvest them now, they'll be nice and tender. We can use the greens and the bottom, and they'll be beautiful to saute with or cook with or eat fresh. Turnips are another really great crop to be growing during the winter time. They are cold hardy. We've been down to 17 degrees and it hasn't hurt them at all. They can tolerate much colder temperatures as well. And you'll know they're ready when they lift up out of the soil. You'll start to see their little shoulders come up, and they're hardly anything under the ground except for their little tiny roots here. Now these are really good during the winter time because they've sweetened up their flavor a little bit. If you've had a turnip during the summertime versus the winter time, you'll know what I'm talking about. These are really good roasted with other vegetables, and throw some blood oranges with them, sprinkled with some herbs and some olive oil on them. Really good. Another really good type of turnip is the Hackerai turnip, also known as a salad turnip. Now this is a really mild turnip. It doesn't even really taste like a turnip. It's kind of like a sweet radish. During the winter time, it'll even sweeten that flavor more, but it's not as cold hardy. So that's why I grow it up against the greenhouse here in this block raised bed, because it just radiates a little bit more heat. And then I'll cover it when we get temperatures below 25 degrees. Otherwise it doesn't survive. So it's not really one of those turnips that you grow if you live in a really cold environment. But this guy, it's really sweet, and you harvest them when they're just a little bit smaller. And that size right there, about a golf ball, is about as big as you want these to get. These are excellent just steamed, then steam the greens with them, sprinkle some olive oil on them, and then sprinkle some lemon juice over the top of it. Really, really another good dish to have for wintertime. February is a great time to get your beds ready for spring planting. But the big question is to till or not to till. Now I've gardened in this area for over 25 years, and I have tilled some years and some years I don't. I've piled on compost year after year, and even by doing that, some years my soil gets really tight. And a lot of that has to do with our climate, our water, our pH. The higher the pH, the hotter the temperatures, and the harder the water, the more compact that soil can be. And so I'll find that if I can't get that fork in here really easy and it's hard to turn, the same thing's going to happen with your roots. So you might want to break that soil up just a little bit. Don't over pulverize it with a tiller. Tilling's fine, but we got to keep it to a minimum so that we don't disturb the microbes in the soil and disrupt the worms as well. So tilling is okay, but you've really got to let your soil tell you what you need to do. So if you can't get that fork in there really good, then it's a good idea to loosen that soil up so that those roots can be healthier and those plants can be healthier. So then you're going to have a better harvest in the end. If my soil's nice and loose, then really the only thing I'm doing is throwing some compost over the top of it. And once in a while, I'll just take this digging fork and just work it in just a little bit. But if my soil is really tight, then I'll get a tiller out and go over it once or twice, or even get a shovel and kind of turn that soil deeply so that I don't create a hard pan with those tines of the tiller. And even when I do that, I'll work in more compost at that point. Take advantage of those warm days in February and get out and garden. And if you're still too cold or under snow, then plan your garden. And we'll see you in our next episode. Till next time, bye.